Alex here with a high conflict child custody video on the abuser's mask. And the context that this comes up in is basically the question, at least, that was presented to me was, how do I get my abuser's mask to slip? I guess that's the phrase used, slip, in court. And I suppose that this is in the context of personality disordered abusers, but this really can apply to any person who, to your face or behind everyone's back, treats you in some kind of adverse manner, or negative, abusive, whatever. And then to everyone else, they present themselves, especially to the court, they present themselves as like a good person who's trying to work with you, and you're the one that's causing all of the problems, especially when they're talking to like their attorney or to the judge. And so my answer to these people who've asked me this question is that the mask really doesn't slip. It never did for my ex in court, and in a lot of the videos that I've seen, I haven't seen that happen. The person still loses, but it's not because they let slip who they really were. What I've seen in the videos, and including my own case, the success comes from forcing the abuser to explain their own actions that they've already taken. In other words, you're basically cornering them with what they've done. It's hard for them to get around what they've done with excuses and with words, with lies, when they're pretty much dead to rights on whatever it is you're bringing to the court. You've got them dead to rights, whether by witnesses, by experts, or by video or written text messages and whatnot. In my case, I expected that my ex would slip in court. Her mask would slip. And she actually presented on the stand as calm, totally she wasn't nervous, she was confident. And when she questioned me, because this was the only hearing that she represented herself on, it was the same. She wasn't tripping over her words. She wasn't shy about asking questions. She seemed very well put together. The mask never slipped, not in my hearing. And I've seen at least 2 different videos of hearings, maybe 3. Actually, I've seen 3 different, no, even more. I've seen somewhere between like 4 and 6 videos with these types of people questioned, and I haven't seen in any of the videos that they let their mask slip. The ones where they were confident, they just presented confident the whole way through. And there were some, I think there was 1 or 2 that were abusive mothers, and they kind of did play the cry card, like they were crying and letting tears flow and all that. But they didn't really seem like they lost their cool. It was kind of obvious that that was just part of their ploy. They didn't really seem to be imploding, and they weren't really letting anyone know that they were, really somebody else. That they didn't really, let their mask slip. It was just, their persona that they were playing as. So if the mask doesn't slip, then how did each of these, at least from what I perceive and from what I've seen, I think in all of the videos that I just referred to, that the abuser lost, and that the person who won the case should have won. How did they lose? And also, of course, how did my ex lose in my case? And I guess I'll just, rather than focus on all of them, I'm just going to focus on my own personal case, and it pretty much, you can extrapolate that to all of the others, because it was basically the same technique, I guess you could call it, is you basically hold them to their actions. In my case, as I mentioned, I'm going to refer to mine. My ex had caused, 5 my son to have 5 extractions and 2, 5 crowns, 2 extractions. That's what it was. It was dental neglect. It was 5 crowns, 2 extractions, and I also got her on sending him to school in an extra small shirt, and I also got her on the midnight exchanges. And I really didn't need her mask to slip. I just accused her of those very specific things that she actually did, and there was proof of. She didn't lie. And I kind of forced her, I cornered her into explaining her conduct. And I think that's how it works, because in all of the other videos that I saw, it was the same exact thing. The abuser's mask never slipped. The thing that killed them was they had done things that were insane. And those insane things that they had done, they could not back out of. They had to explain them, and they try as they might. They tried to come up with excuses, just like my ex did, and explain it and shrug it off. It's not that important. But when it came down to it, I didn't need the mask to slip. The court judged her by her conduct. So she sounded like a good mother. She asked the questions that she needed to ask to sound like a mother who cared. She presented herself as calm, cool, and collected, as professional, as intelligent. And she still lost because she could not explain what she had done. She could not explain why it was in the best interest of her son to be exchanged at midnight. She could not explain why she was sending him to school in an extra small shirt. She could not explain why at so many exchanges there were explosive situations that the court made findings were her fault. In my order granting physical custody, my judge specifically says that the conflict was her fault, not both of her fault, not both of our faults, not my fault, her fault. And of course, the 5 crowns and 2 extractions, which was egregious, and not taking him to school. I had her on that too. And she did try to give excuses on all of these things, and she did try to make it sound like she was being reasonable, but she failed because it was just so insane. There's no other word to describe what was going on. Oh, and the stealing of the clothes. Every exchange she would steal some of our son's clothes. And by steal, I mean it was ours. We purchased it, and she'd just keep it and never give it back. On purpose, and saying a message that she was keeping it on purpose and the reasons that she was doing so. The reasons, of course, were invalid, and I guess she imagined that that would somehow protect her in court, but it didn't. So with all of those other hearing videos, I looked them over, and I saw the same pattern. Time and time again, the lawyer, or if the person was representing themselves, they pinned their ex on their actions. And it didn't matter how articulate and how honest they sounded, and how much of a good parent they wanted to sound like, and how they said all the right phrases and the right words. The court looked at what they had done, and the court ruled against them. So I suppose the advice I'm giving you now is don't expect their mask to slip. Don't expect it to happen. What you got to do is pin them down on what they have done, on their conduct, and that is what you make your case on. You don't hope and cross your fingers that your ex is going to somehow just get so mad that they're going to start calling you names in court and tell the judge what they think about him and accuse you of this and that, and they're not going to do that. And if they do, then you're really lucky, because that makes it a slam dunk case. If your ex just goes on the stand and says, you know what, Your Honor, I hate my ex, I want to ruin their life, I'm going to drag them through court till they have no money left, and I'm going to make them run away, or I'm going to make them abandon the kids by, having them live, a horrible life because I'm constantly, I don't know, accusing them of things, sending emails, whatever. If your ex says that on the stand, wow, how did you pull that off? And if you did, then obviously you're going to win, because they just basically said what was going on. I can't imagine how, even in the slightest, I can't imagine how my ex would have ever done this. Maybe she made like a facial reaction at some point, but is that really a mask slipping? My ex rolled her eyes on the stand, and now the judge is convinced. It just doesn't work that way. So focus less on that and focus more on building the case based on what your ex has done, on their conduct. If you want to get the details on what I'm talking about with respect to my own case, you can watch my video on modifying physical custody. I explain it all there, and with that, I'll go ahead and see you guys next time.